So we are going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Aloni with Schneps Media. Schneps Media is the largest local media company in the New York metro area. We publish over 80 newspapers, magazines, websites, webinars, podcasts, and events throughout Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Manhattan, Long Island, the East End, Philadelphia, and even Palm Beach, Florida. And today we are thrilled to bring you the webinar, Medicaid Home Care Success Stories. Care coordination can make all the difference. As you and your loved one ages, Medicaid can serve as a lifeline to help provide the important care or assistance that you'll need. But approval and assessment process for home care can be complicated. So today we will discuss what you need to know about Medicaid home care with two experts. So let me introduce them to you now. Please welcome Loren Napier. Loren is a paralegal and Medicaid home care coordinator at Cona Elder Law. Loren guides clients and caregivers through the complex Medicaid application process and doesn't stop there. She also coordinates the entire managed long-term care process, including the home health aid evaluation and services implementation process. Loren has successfully assisted older adults through several sectors of the medical service field for almost a decade. She specializes in client advocacy and has excellent rapport with multiple home care agencies and providers to secure the best benefits possible for their clients. Welcome, Loren.
How you doing?
Thank you. Good. Now, please welcome Melissa Negrin-Weiner. Melissa is a senior partner and manages the government benefits department at Cona Elder Law, concentrating her practice in the areas of asset protection, Medicaid eligibility planning, estate planning, special needs planning, mediation, guardianships, and veteran benefits. She supervises the preparation of Medicaid applications for nursing home care, home health care, and community benefits, resolves complex Medicaid issues, and represents families facing a reduction in Medicaid home care hours and services. She has been named a super lawyer and a 2023 best lawyer. Notable achievements include being named to Leadership in Law, Top 50 Women in Business, Outstanding Women in Law, Top Attorney of North America, and Who's Who Women in Professional Services, just to name a few. She's accredited by the Department of Veteran Affairs and was admitted to practice before the United States Supreme Court. Welcome, Melissa.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So let's get started. What is the first thing someone should do if they feel that a loved one is in need of home health care?
So we often, recommend certainly when someone feels a family member is in need of care in the home that they reach out sooner rather than later, because the process does take time. And it has gotten more and more protracted over time. When I first started practicing, we were able to get care in the home much faster than we can now, for many different reasons. So we certainly recommend, reaching out as soon as possible. And then we would talk about, first from an asset protection standpoint. What does the person have? How is it held? Whose name is it in? Going through kind of the process of transferring or setting up a trust and preserving their assets. Once we get them financially eligible through that process, that's when we turn them over to Loren and we talk about, how are we going to get the help in the house? And that's really becomes such an important part of the process, because back in the day, it used to just be we'd get the approval and then, Department of Social Services would send in a home care agency, and it was that simple. There's so much now that's involved that, again, it really takes time to get the right person in place. So, the real takeaway from that is, as soon as you start to see something going on, pick up the phone.
Terrific.
I agree. When I was working for one of the managed long-term care plans, we would always see an influx of referrals around Christmas or around Thanksgiving or around July 4th, because these are the times usually when people are home visiting their loved ones. And this is the time where, maybe you live across the country, but you came home and you realize, okay, grandma can't walk without her walker. And this wasn't like this 6 months ago. So usually around this time, honestly, is the time for you to sit and for you to assess in your own way your family member, your loved ones, to see if they really need help. And if they do need help, our firm is always available to assist through the process. And sometimes it does take months. And it's usually because the demand is very high, and it's always higher, like I said, during the holidays.
So what you're saying is it's important to keep your eyes open and assess your loved ones at all times of year, not just this time.
Yes, of course, of course.
Get professionals involved, because there's a lot of pre-work that needs to be done to be able to put the right care in place.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So what is involved in having someone assessed for home care hours?
Well, the first step, like we said, is to get the financial approval. So once that's done, the next step is somebody needs to be the spokesperson for the family. So whether it's your child, your grandchild, your spouse, somebody needs to be there to assist with advocating for the client. That's number one. The second part of it is having your doctors involved. Have your doctors write out your list of medications, have them write out all of the diagnoses that are, happening to the patient at the time, whatever items that they might need in the home. So whether it's a wheelchair, whether it's a walker, a cane, if they need a Hoyer lift at home, they need a list of things so that they be able to speak to the nurses when the initial assessments are being scheduled. So what usually happens is once, like I said, the financial approval is completed, we would call the New York Independent Assessor's Office. And they would schedule 2 appointments where a registered nurse and a clinician, such as a nurse practitioner, a medical doctor, a physician's assistant even, are going to certify what the registered nurse says, and they're going to come up with what's called the nursing home level of care score. And that score is based on, if you needed to go to a nursing home, how many points, on a scale from 0 to, I believe, 30 or 35, how many points is it for you to get the same amount of care in a nursing home at home? So what happens is the nurse will ask a ton of questions about lifestyle, if the person can do things on their own, how dependent they are on other people, simple tasks like doing your laundry or washing yourself or grooming yourself, if you can cook, if you can walk, if you can do anything, and how much help is required from you doing it totally independently, or if you require just a little bit of help, or if you are totally and completely dependent on somebody else. And depending on what your own answers are, because obviously we always aim for the truth, that tends to affect the score, and that will then affect how many hours eventually the long-term care plans will offer to the client for them to have care in the home.
And what's interesting too, along those lines, what Loren just said about, telling the truth. It's funny because people don't tend to over dramatize what's going on. They actually tend to under. And the reason for that is most of the time it's the adult child, right? So it's difficult for adult children to talk about what's wrong with mom or dad, what they can't do, right? We always want to talk about what they can do because it makes us feel better to talk about what they can do. And sometimes we feel they can do more than they actually can. So that's something that we really counsel our clients or the adult children that we're working with, to really kind of take a step back and think about before these assessments, because you may say, yes, mom can dress herself, but is she putting on the appropriate clothing for the time of year? Is she wearing mismatched items? Is she putting on dirty clothes? There's so much more that goes into that one basic question. And it can make a huge difference in the amount of hours that Medicaid will approve, because you're pulling a whole task out now if you say, yes, mom can dress herself. So it's an interesting kind of way of looking at things, because you would think that people would, kind of lean towards the side of saying it's worse than it is, but it's actually the opposite.
It's so interesting. It's like, and it's something you wouldn't even recognize that you're doing, and why it's so important to be working with someone who's not related, emotionally, because, you kind of don't even realize that, you may not even, it's because it's unconscious. Like you said, you don't want to believe it, but it's also unconscious. And like you said, I don't know that people would necessarily think about the distinction between, is it clean clothes or dirty clothes? It's just, can you put your clothes on?
Right.
So that question can be very different than really what the person needs to be able to live at the level that they should be living.
Right.
Yes. And again, it's about, their scale, the state uniform, I think it's the uniform assessment scale, is the scale that the state of New York uses to really come up with this nursing home level of care score. So it goes from totally independent, like I could do everything by myself, I don't need any help. And it goes to totally dependent, where I need somebody to hand me my clothes. I need somebody to put the clothes on me, button my buttons, put my shoes and my socks on. And most people are embarrassed even to say, okay, yes, I have to remind my mom to take a shower. I have to remind my mom to put deodorant on. I have to remind her to set her clothes out. I have to remind her to put underwear on. So if you're noticing that you are doing a little bit more than what you would do for yourself, that's something to notate. And I've had multiple clients come back to say, that's not something I really even thought of, because I thought that everybody does it. And that's not the case at all. Everybody's case is different, but it's you as the advocate, because you're there, with your parent or your grandparent or whomever. You're there and you literally watch them all the time. And you have to convince an outside party why or how many hours they should pay for. And it's a little difficult, but if you know what's happening in your home and you are involved, and you're involved with the doctors and everybody in community, it should be a lot simpler for you. But again, we're always here to help.
That's such a good point, because I think, sometimes we become so used to the new normal that we kind of readjust our thinking, and we kind of forget that we've shifted. But if you really look at it from beginning to now, you can see the difference. And that obviously is going to affect the amount of hours that they're going to give your loved one, which I think is one of the keys. Because can you give us some tips, for families who are really looking to get as many home care hours approved as possible? Because I'm sure all of this goes into that, right? If you're saying, oh, my mom's fine, she can dress herself, then the amount of hours are going to be much less. So what are some tips for families?
Well, one of the first things you want to make sure you do, this is kind of funny considering what I just said, is you want to make sure there's a family member that's part of this assessment. Because if you think the family member is going to kind of say, the person doesn't need help as much as they need, you should hear what the actual person has to say. I don't need any help. I'm totally fine. I could do all of this by myself. You certainly don't want that happening. So you want somebody there, somebody to see what's happening, to see what the assessor is asking and how the person is responding, mom or dad or whoever it is, because we've had situations where we've had to appeal decisions because the notes in the file say one thing, but the child is telling us something completely different happened when they were there. So you always want to make sure that there's somebody there. And then there's some other things that we recommend. Loren, if you want to talk about the getting multiple assessments and things like that.
Yes. So with having the initial assessments completed by the state of New York, we always recommend that multiple MLTCs are being considered at once, meaning we
What are
put in.
MLTCs? What are
Oh,
M-
sorry. It's managed long-term care plans. And those are the plans that are contracted with the state of New York to provide in-home care for Medicaid recipients. So usually it's anybody that's 21 or older who needs in-home care or who may be disabled or they're just ill. Lots of people are like well enough, they feel okay to walk around, but they need just an additional push. So that's why they're now in Medicaid. And they require just a little bit of help at home. So whether it's somebody just to keep them engaged, they can do a little bit by themselves, but they need somebody to keep them engaged. So that means that the long-term care plan will send somebody to your home for a couple of hours a day to just keep you engaged at home, to help you cook, to help you do laundry, to help you do minor tasks at home. Or on the extreme end, they will send they will send aides that'll be there all day to do all of the tasks with you, to remind you to take your medicine, to remind you to take a shower or help you shower. They're going to help you use the bathroom. They're going to help you get dressed. They're going to help you cook. They're going to cook for you if necessary. So what we do is, like I said, we recommend that you consult with 3 long-term care plans because each plan is able to offer something a little different than the other. The basics are all the same, like they can offer the same basic services, but some plans have more resources available to offer more hours to the client.
And do you get information back? Like, for example, let's say you go to 3 and do they all give you what they would give you for home care hours and then you can decide, or does it not work like that? Oh, okay.
So what happens is now, because of the changes with the New York Independent Assessor's Office, now they all see the same score and they see the same notes from the original assessment nurse that have been certified by the state clinician, right? Because it has to be certified first. Once it's certified, let's say Home First or VNS Health or Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield, they look at the information, they say, okay, well, I have enough resources to offer you 7 days, 5 hours a day. And the next plan can say, okay, well, I can offer you 6 days, 8 hours a day. And the other plan can say, I can offer you 7 days a week, 7 hours a day. So you just pick and choose which works best for you and your schedule.
Can you negotiate?
So I would say before the changes with the Independent Assessor's Office, it was a lot easier to negotiate, a lot easier. But now that the state has changed their ways of assessing and, they're sort of making you jump through a little bit of hoops now that were not there before, you can negotiate, but it's just a little bit harder, which is why it's important that the very first time at the initial assessment that we get it right the first time, so you don't even have to appeal.
Got it. So the first step is finding the person who's going to be with your loved one through this process, through the assessment, and getting all the finances in place. And then it's about how you address the assessment and making sure that is tight and accurate.
Yes.
Right. And then it's about making sure you engage several long-term care providers, make sure that you're going to get the right and the best care.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So what if my mother is, let's say, receiving home care through Medicaid program and her condition then worsens? Because now we've done the assessment. What happens then?
So you can always request to be reassessed for more hours if your needs increase. I mean, sometimes you'll get to a point where there may be a recommendation for nursing home care, and we certainly can help families with, finding the right place and converting Medicaid benefits to institutional care. And there's a lot that goes into that as well. But if it's a matter of just requesting additional hours because the care needs have increased, that's something that you can do through your MLTC once you're signed up with them.
And is
Also,
that hard to get done? Does it take a long time?
it's not hard to get because usually by the time you are enrolled in the long-term care plan, you've already been assigned a caseworker, you've been assigned a nurse case manager, usually who's constantly going through your notes to see, okay, let's say Mrs. Johnson, does she need anything extra? So she has to call you, she has to check in with you at least once a month to ensure that if there are any changes, that they are on the front line to sort of anticipate the change and to ask for, additional hours on your behalf. Lots of times that means a brand new assessment, which, is totally fine. But it's up to the client and up to the case manager to sort of work in tandem to ensure that the client's needs are best met. Now, sometimes you will come to a point where they can't offer you any other hours. And at that point, there are other programs that are sponsored by the state of New York that would usually provide more hours than the long-term care plans can offer. But that's usually like on an emergency basis only because it's a hard program to get into. It's called the Nursing Home Transition and Diversion Waiver Program. It's a great plan. They offer a lot of the same services that the managed long-term care plans do, but they tend to be a little bit more in depth. And it's a great plan. We have multiple clients here who were successfully enrolled and received 24-hour care, which is great. But it goes by a case-by-case basis and also requires family involvement.
So this is something that you would help your clients with from the beginning when you're working on financial decisions through the whole program that your loved one is with. So from changing it, et cetera. Okay. So I mean, it sounds very complicated. So how important is it to work, with an elder law firm when applying for these benefits? And, why is it important to work with an elder law firm as opposed to maybe just a law firm? Like, hey, my friend is a real estate attorney. Can they help me? What's important about, who you work with and in getting these benefits?
Yeah. So we spend a lot of time kind of dealing with Medicaid applications gone wrong because somebody either tried to do it themselves. I mean, I'll tell you, if it's a very straightforward, simple situation and someone submits the application themselves, but once they get to the point of the care coordination and getting the aides in place, it's a whole different ballgame. But we do end up having to clean up a lot of things that look like that. There are a lot of people kind of in the right now, kind of in the practice of saying, oh yeah, I do elder law. And unfortunately, it's not unfortunately, it's not something that you can just kind of dabble in because everything is changing constantly. I mean, there was just a change, as Loren was saying, to the New York State assessment. There was just a change in how many activities of daily living you need to have or require assistance with in order to even apply for Medicaid. So these changes, there are a lot of nuances and changes that are constant. And if you're not in it every single day, you're just not going to provide the service that the client really deserves. In addition to that, there are a lot of non-attorneys out there who will try to submit Medicaid applications, but they're not allowed to practice law. They're not allowed to give advice regarding planning, transfers, anything that really has to do with, the bigger picture. So they're doing this kind of Medicaid in a vacuum type of thing that is then spilling over and having major effects on all of their planning, their families down the line when they pass away, how things were set up. For example, there was just a case we had dealt with where, you can qualify for Medicaid with a house in your name in New York State, as long as the equity value of the house is not over, it's about
955,000.
Yeah, 55,000. So, but what happens is when you pass away, Medicaid's going to come back and collect against your estate. They want the money back that they paid out. But we also have no penalties for asset transfers for home care in New York. So had this person been advised to go ahead and transfer the house out of their name, they would not have been penalized for it. And when they passed away, there would be no estate for Medicaid to come back to. So the family ended up losing the house, having no idea that they were going to lose the house, because all along they were told the house was protected, because in New York State, you can qualify for a house while you're on Medicaid. But the person that was handling it didn't know the legal ramifications of what they were doing. So in answer to your question, it's just like, and I know that this is cliche, but it's just like going to, a foot doctor for a heart condition, and you just don't want to do it.
Yeah. Look, there's financial ramifications and there are care level ramifications, because if you really don't know what is just this whole assessment process, I mean, that frightens me. I think, not being, going into that blind, I think can be incredibly detrimental to your loved one, not having all that information. So we actually, I did put the Cona Elder Law website up in the chat. Where else can people reach out to you?
People can certainly go to our website. Our website is chock full of information, ConaElderLaw.com. And they can email us at, my email address is mnegrin@ConaLaw.com. And Loren is L. Napier @ConaLaw.com. And they can call us at 631-390-5000. We're available. We have offices in Melville and in Port Jefferson now, and we're available to meet via Zoom if necessary, or even on the phone.
Can you say that number again? Because I want to put it in the chat.
Of course, 631-390-5000.
So I put that in the chat. I put the website in the chat, and I put Melissa and Lauren's emails in the chat as well. So you all can reach out and be able to talk about your specific, because everyone's is so
different.
That is very true. Every case is very different.
Well, this has certainly brought a lot of important information. I have a ton of questions. Would that be okay if we jumped over to some of our attendee questions?
Sure.
Stacey wanted to know, at some point, could you address, and here it would be what if someone enrolls for hospice, do they lose their home care?
They won't lose their home care. Hospice can work in tandem with Medicaid home care. So hospice is covered by Medicare, and hospice will only approve a certain number of hours. It's limited. So we have had plenty of people who have some hospice care covered by Medicare, and then in conjunction with a home health aid covered by the Medicaid program.
However, what you have to do is you have to disenroll from the hospice program first to enroll into the long-term care program, and then you have to re-enroll into hospice, because this is just the rules that Medicaid came up with.
So you can't, if you have hospice already, you can't then apply for home care.
Correct.
Right, you have to disenroll, enroll in home care, and then.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Eleanor has a very specific question. Has the ADL requirements for Medicaid changed from 3 ADL to 4 ADL? And what is ADL?
Okay, so ADL means activities of daily living. And the requirement changed from 3 ADLs. It actually went from 2 ADLs that you need assistance with to 3. But if you have any type of neurological condition like dementia, Alzheimer's, ALS, multiple sclerosis or anything like that, it's that diagnosis plus 2 ADLs. So you need assistance walking, you need assistance, cooking, or, things of that nature.
Right. You're looking at bathing, grooming, dressing, toileting, feeding, turning and positioning for people who are bedbound. Those are the activities of daily living when we refer to ADLs. And it used to be that you only needed assistance with 2. You needed to require assistance with 2 of those. Now, like Loren said, it's 3. One of which can be, if you have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or dementia. And also you need to require, in addition to the 3, some sort of limited assistance, at least with physical maneuvering. So they've really upped the ante as far as, how much needs to be wrong in order for people to qualify for care.
Very important to know that. Holly wanted to know, if a person has 24/7 care in the home for a period of years, until they go through all their remaining assets that have been spent, does it make it easier to receive the same level of services from Medicaid? In other words, does it help with the evidence needed to obtain that care? So if they've been getting that care, it sounds like outside of Medicare, Medicaid, is it then easier to apply?
No. So, if you're spending down assets and paying privately for care, and then you apply for Medicaid, and you get, say, 8 hours a day, and you've been getting 24/7. We could try to appeal based on what you've been receiving, but the truth is you've been receiving what you've been receiving because you're paying for it, not necessarily because you needed it, right? So it doesn't really strengthen the argument. And also, you don't have to spend down all of the assets. You can do asset protection planning, move assets out of the person's name, apply for Medicaid, and then you can use those protected assets to supplement the care if you don't get what you think the person needs through the Medicaid program. So that could stretch the money out a little bit longer. And that's kind of what we do with our families. We kind of look at the whole picture. We take a really, a holistic approach to look at the entire picture and work with you on, what you're doing now and what really would make the most sense from a medical and financial perspective.
Like, that's like a huge, mind-blowing thing that you said, because the question was, we're going through all of the assets first. And what you're saying is you don't have to do that.
No.
Correct.
You
Not
can
in New
use
York.
assets and get help. I mean, that's huge.
But what it is the rumor, that's what I'll call it. It's the rumor that you have, in order to be on a Medicaid program, have anything. And that's something, because in certain programs that may be true, but that's not true for every program and participant. Wow. So, that's why it's always best to consult with an attorney. People literally do this every day so that you don't have to spend through everything all the time. And I think it's a great investment because you get to save your assets and plan for your future, for your family's generational wealth, and also get the care at home that you desperately need.
Fantastic. Thank you. Mary brings up a really good question. What about people who have no family to help them? What can a concerned friend do?
That's a great question. There are people, and more now than ever, there are people out there, geriatric care managers, or companies that will help coordinate all of the resources that somebody needs. So they'll coordinate the attorney, the financial advisor, they'll bring everybody together to help somebody who's in need. If it's a person who doesn't really have resources, but just needs help in the home, they can reach out to an attorney to help with the Medicaid application. Or, we have other resources that can help with Medicaid if there's no funds available at all. Sometimes those people will even bring a guardianship proceeding if the individual that they're looking to help doesn't have the capacity to kind of do any of this on their own. So there's a lot of different avenues you can take. And really at the end of the day, you can always reach out to Adult Protective Services if you're really concerned about the well-being of an individual in their home and they're not willing to accept help, or whatever the case may be. Adult Protective Services is kind of the way to go there.
Thank you.
Also, if they have a power of attorney or they don't have one, maybe that's a considering. That's something you should consider, rather, talking to them about, because maybe, all right, they don't want the help in that way, but in case they need it, somebody can advocate, and it's legal for you to advocate for your friend, and to assist them with things that they need, and you don't have to jump through as many hoops.
That brings up a question too. If someone is going to be working with your loved one, you or a family member or friend, does there have to be some sort of legal arrangement for them to be a part of that assessment?
Not so much to be a
anyone
part of
at your house at that day that says, hey, I'm her daughter, or I'm her friend, or.
Yeah, I'm not so much to participate in the assessment, but I agree with Loren. It's really important to have it, just to have it. I mean, let's say the assessment doesn't go the way that you want it to go and we're going to appeal the decision. Well, part of that appeal is going to be that we need a lot of medical records. So the agent under a healthcare proxy will be able to help us with obtaining medical records as long as there's HIPAA language in the healthcare proxy. So having a properly executed power of attorney and healthcare proxy can never, ever be a bad thing, unless you've named a person who will do bad things, but it can never be a bad thing to have that, in your back pocket.
Great advice. A question here, if a person needs maximum care, will they still be allowed to have in-home care, or will they push them to be placed in a nursing home? I'm sure that's a concern of many.
So, I mean, in my experience, if you need maximum care, you can go one of two ways. You could totally just place them in a nursing home, and I think all of the needs would be met in a nursing home. But if you want them to be at home with you, you sort of have to work with what the government is going to offer you, but also advocating for that person. So again, there is the managed long-term care plan, like a Home First, like I said, a VNS, Centers plan, there's River Spring at Home. We have all these plans that are available in all counties of the state of New York, which is great. But if that's not enough, New York State also came up with waiver programs such as the OPWDD program, which is the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, because some people are not sickly because they're elderly. They just, require extra help because they have disabilities, in other ways. So that's one totally great waiver program that does offer like job assistance. They offer like homes, like you're able to live in a group home. They're able to put you in an independent living facility. So you would have your own apartment and you would have a care manager that would check in. So that's, a program that's for people that fill or, with one set of boxes, and if there are people who really need a lot of care, they also have, like I said, this nursing home transition and diversion waiver program that also checks off a lot of boxes. They have doctors that'll visit you at home. You have nurses that'll come visit you once a week. You have a care manager that checks in on a monthly basis, but if you need them, they're on call 24/7. So there are different options available. It just depends on what your needs are. This entire Medicaid program, the home care program especially, was designed to help everybody, but you have to be fully aware of everything that you need.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
And, we always tell people also, we can never guarantee that an assessment is not going to result in recommendation of nursing home care.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to say, Loren, probably I'm going to use like the last 5 years. I don't think I've seen it happen.
No.
I mean, I've seen it happen naturally where the person has declined to the point where the family's like, we can't do this anymore.
Correct.
But I have not had an assessment done where the assessor said this person is not safe at home.
Correct. I mean, and usually even if they're saying that they're not safe, it usually is something in the environment. It's not because the person themselves needs to be in a nursing home. Because in my experience, I've seen where, they do the state assessment, everything's fine with the state assessments. And then a nurse will go into the home from the long-term care plan, and I'll see like, okay, it's a safety hazard because these stairs are broken. So it's a safety hazard for the patient. It's also a safety hazard for anybody that would have to enter or exit the home. So then right then and there, they'll stop the process until that's been addressed. So I've never, in my time, I have never ever seen anybody be recommended totally for nursing home care by any state nurse or by a nurse sent from a long-term care plan. However, like Melissa said, there is no like absolute there where they absolutely can't, say that you should go to a nursing home. They leave the option open.
Okay, thank you for that. We have two questions here. One is from Heather about assets, and Heather wanted to know, what is the look back period and does that come into play with asset transfers? And also I asked, is there a financial cap regarding assets being transferred out of an individual's name to qualify for Medicaid?
So in order to qualify for Medicaid right now in 2022, you can't have more than $16,800 in assets. That does not include retirement accounts. So that doesn't include IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, as long as those are in payout status, meaning you're taking the required minimum distribution, those assets don't count towards the $16,800. That number is going up in 2023 to, Loren,
28 is 28,500 something. I don't recall
We just got the numbers, so we haven't committed them to memory yet. Give us a couple of days. It is going up. It goes up every year. It is going up substantially this year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the same whether you're applying for home care or nursing home care.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. You want to?
I was going to say, and then the income went from $934 a month for 2022 to being $1,563 a month for 2023.
But if you make more than that, we can help you set up a pooled trust to protect excess income. So your assets and income are never going to be the reason why we tell you you can't get Medicaid. Unless they are so high that it's not, it's not something that we would ever do. Mm-hmm. That is the limitations as far as the assets go. The transfers and the penalty period is a little bit more of a we're waiting to see kind of thing. So right now in New York State, we have no look back for community Medicaid. So when we apply for community Medicaid, you have to be below that limit of what's now $16,800. They do go back 3 months of your bank statements, but you could give away $1 million and they wouldn't care. Okay. That is how it stands right now. There's been talk of changing that and putting a 2.5-year look back in place for community Medicaid. Which means Medicaid would look back 2.5 years and they would penalize you for asset transfers that you made during that 2.5 years. They would basically take what you've given away over that 2.5-year period. They would calculate, they would do a calculation and they would say, okay, based on what you've given away, you're not eligible for home care for 3 months or 4 months or whatever it is. This is what they do now for nursing home care, except it's a 5-year look back, right? So we've never had to deal with this from a home care perspective in New York State. If it does come to pass, it likely won't happen until 2024, maybe even a little bit later. So recommendation right now is to plan and to move assets and set up trusts and get things in place so that if they put in 2025, if they put in a 2.5-year look back, you're going to be out of it already, right? But again, there's no, it's not set in stone. So we're just kind of waiting and seeing what they're going to do. The biggest kind of reason why they haven't done it, or they didn't do it when it first came up in 2020, was because we're in this public health crisis, which we're still in, and they cannot reduce Medicaid coverage during a public health crisis. And by putting in the look back, they're going to limit what people are able to get as far as care. So they can't put it in place during a public health crisis, public health emergency, whatever it's called.
There are so many intricacies and so many possibilities, and from a positive perspective, opportunities to find ways to be able to support your loved one and be able to set them up to get the right kind of care that they need at home. But it is a lot about knowing how to do it, where to go, and having, a partner in that, with an experienced law firm, obviously is very important. So we could be talking with you for the rest of the day, but I do want to respect your time. You have a lot of people to help. It's a very complicated process. Well, people can go to the website at Cona Elder Law, CONA elderlaw.com. Call 631-390-5000. And you can get in contact and set up a consultation and talk about what is right for you and be able to get more of your questions answered. But I do want to thank you, Melissa, Loren. Thank you so much for spending this time with us and enlightening us on so many of these issues and being able to get the best possible home care for our loved ones. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us. It was great to see you.
You too. And thank you to all of our attendees for joining us this morning. This has been recorded. We will give you the link to it. It will also be available on the Schneps Media YouTube channel, so you can go there and check it out. Please watch it again, share it with your loved ones. This is a great thing to share over the holidays and discuss it with your family when you're with them. You have everyone together. This is a great time to be able to say, hey, this is something that I saw, check it out, and let's talk about it over the holidays. So please do that. Again, thank you for joining us, and I wish you all to stay safe, stay healthy, and have a beautiful holiday. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.